Okay. So, how was your day?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah, I had a meeting about a summer camp that I'm going to be helping develop and teach this coming summer. So
Really? Is it for like
should be really good.
is it for like young people? We're doing what exactly? Like for little kids?
Yeah, so this one's going to be for middle school students,
Okay.
and it's going to be like a combination of psychology and data science
Okay.
stuff. So we're going to be like conducting little experiments with giant cockroaches,
Oh,
um,
nice.
and then analyzing the data. We might do some. It's none of it's finalized, but we also might do some like light human experiments where they can collect data and analyze
Gonna experiment on the kids?
it. Well, the kids are going to do the experiments.
Oh, okay. Unethical experiments or just regular experiments? We're
Just
gonna,
regular experiments.
are you
Like
sure?
one of them is
We're not gonna teach the
yeah,
kids
no,
about
no,
Harlow's monkeys?
not, I mean we might teach them about it, but no, this the like for the like one of the experiments I've done with students before is I have these inversion goggles, and so you put some
Hmm.
goggles on and it inverts your vision, so everything's upside down,
Oh, cool.
and it makes it really hard to do anything. But one of the things that I have students do is the star tracing task. So you've probably learned about this in one of your or several psych classes. They talk about HM. Does that sound familiar at all?
Not really. I may have just forgotten about it though.
Yeah, HM or Henry Molaison. So he had I forget the story, but I think he had epilepsy, and so they removed part of his brain on both sides, and so he lost some of his memory. And they were doing these memory tests, and one of the things they had him do was trace this star. And so even though if you had asked him, have you done this star tracing activity? He would say no, but even though he said he had never done it before, he was still getting better by practicing it. And so it was like it's an important study because it demonstrated there was a difference between explicit and implicit memory. And so he had lost his explicit memory, but he retained his implicit memory. And so I mean, we're not really testing implicit and explicit memory with students. It's just a fun thing to do to show that there's like I just like play with people's perception and motor skills and stuff like that. But
Yeah, it's really interesting. So it's like he subconsciously knew it despite the fact he can't recall it. Is that
yeah, yeah,
um,
so he's not able to like sort of consciously recall that he had done those things before, but he was getting better. And so the fact that he's getting better, he is remembering it at some level. So the sort of unconscious memory, that's what implicit memory would be. Yeah.
it's really interesting. Yeah, the human brain is extremely complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching these old videos. I forgot what the YouTube channel was. I just remember the host was this guy who I thought was kind of gullible, but apparently it was like this guy got into a accident and he hit in the head, and then when he woke up, he suddenly knew how to speak Spanish, but couldn't speak English as well anymore. I don't know if that's a true story, but like I don't know.
I think there's I mean, I don't know that you could learn a new language without having experienced it. I don't think that to me that doesn't sound believable. But I think there is a condition where people like develop an accent, and I can't remember what that's called, but I've seen a videos about that, which to me seems like maybe possibly believable. I don't know. It's not That's not something that I know much about, but I have seen that before. People get into some sort of head injury, and they have some sort of accent that they didn't have before. Seems a little more believable, but I don't know.
Yeah, what I was about to say something. Forgot what.
That
Oh,
happens to me all the time.
oh yeah, now I remember. Yeah, I was actually wondering, like, since it's about like old memories that they don't really recall, but still have like basically somewhere in their subconscious. It makes me wonder, like with language learning, when people listen to those in their sleep, they're still actually hearing it. Does that actually help? with
I'm
learning
not
language.
sure. I know I've seen. I'm gonna try to move away from my desk here, so I'm not bumping my my laptop. I know I've seen stuff like that, but I don't know if that's true or not. If that helps or not. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm
I don't
really
know.
wondering what studies show because the closest thing I could think of doing that was when I was just late at night watching some Norm Macdonald stand up on Netflix and I drank some NyQuil beforehand and I fell asleep. I didn't realize I fell asleep, but I do remember still hearing him talking as I was sleeping. That's the closest I could think of, but it's not like I can recall what the jokes were, you know?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I'm not sure about that one. I've heard of that idea before, but I'm not sure if it works. I'm not sure. Not
Yeah,
sure.
it's one of those things that
But
you just hear about, but nobody really pulls up any studies.
yeah, I mean, afterwards we can look that up and see. I'm sure that there is an answer to that. I just don't.
Yeah.
My interest is more in like animal behavior
Mm.
types of things, or like learning animal behavior, animal cognition, and um, and so some people will specialize in language and language learning, and so those people would probably know the answer to that.
Well,
And then you know,
I definitely do like watching those animal experiments, especially with psychology, like that. Forgot what the name was. I think it was on TED Talk though. But the guy who like had the two monkeys and they had to like give like the pebble or whatever, and the monkey had to give it back. One monkey was given a grape, the other was given I think it was like a cucumber or something. But the one that was getting the
yeah,
cucumber really wanted a grape, so he quit doing it and tried to like break out the cage because he really
yeah.
wanted
I
it.
think there's two that are similar. One is like fairness, where monkeys have a sense of fairness, and then or whatever species. I don't know if it was a monkey or if it was an ape that they were using, but and then there's another one where I think they're using currency. So it's like they're paying for things with pebbles, or I don't remember, but there's something like that. But that would be like animal cognition stuff for sure.
Yeah, it's always the monkey studies
For
that they
sure.
got that always just fuck me up. Like I remember reading about Harlow's monkeys for the first time and yeah, just seeing the way they were behaving after being isolated and how they would like walk around their cages and avoid social contact with the other monkeys and they would always choose like comfort over food or uh how it started freaking out when they tried to scare it with the loud noises. That just really fucked me up just because I
Like
was
you feel like it's unethical, sort of. What do you mean by that?
it just made me really sad. I mean, it was definitely unethical, but at the same time, it's not like we were going to figure out the how isolation affects them without actually like, going through with it.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah, I did show that in my introduction to psychology course. One
Mhm.
of the things that I tried to do was include like original footage from these different famous experiments and stuff. And so that's one of the ones that we watched. And there was a bunch of students being, oh,
Yeah.
feeling like they were, sad watching that. But it's kind of, yeah. I mean, I can appreciate why people feel that way for sure.
Yeah. Another similar one they did on a female monkey that had no social contact from the day it was born. And what they tried to do, they artificially inseminated her and she gave birth and it had like a crying baby monkey and it's literally never been raised by anything else, so it didn't know what to do, so she kind of freaked out and ate it. That was
Oh,
another one. Uh,
is that from
I,
the same? Is that from Harlow as well?
I don't think that was Harlow. I think that was a different one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, there's a third one I remember. It was practicing trying to see like the effects of learned helplessness, and they had like it was another monkey that had like in a box, tried to like climb out. At some point, it realized it just couldn't get out. Then they put it in a box where it could easily get out, but chose not to. And that was like
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's like learned all these terms from just how they badly treat monkeys. It was kind of just
Yeah,
depressing.
usually they talk about learned helplessness with a dog, where they have a
Yeah.
dog in a box and there's like a barrier where they like shock the bottom of the dog's feet and the dog jumps over and then they prevent him from jumping and um and then when they allow him to jump again, he doesn't jump. But I mean, I'm sure that there's experiments with chimpanzees or something too.
Yeah, the only reason I remember them is because I gave all the monkeys names to help me remember.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Harlow's monkey. I named him ISO, the isolated monkey.
No.
Yeah, that definitely made it easier to remember. Yeah, those definitely were depressing. I remember a similar one with an ostrich that was isolated. I don't remember exactly what happened with that one, but I just remember being told about it from
Hmm.
my brother.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't remember that one either.
yeah, the most common psychological experiments that I think most people know, it's either Zimbardo's Stanford Prison Experiment or the Milgram experiment. I think that's what it's called.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, the Milgram one. We learned about that one too in my intro class. There's good videos of that one. Pretty cool.
Yeah, the power of authority figures. Every,
Hmm.
I remember reading it was
So
like the less sophisticated they look, like if they weren't wearing the lab coat, the chances of people saying no were a bit higher. If it was on the phone, the chances of them saying no were higher.
if they were wearing the lab coat, well, no,
Yeah,
sorry. So if they were wearing the lab coat, they're more likely to go along with it.
yeah,
Maybe I misunderstood what you just said, but
yeah. If they
um,
had the lab
yeah,
coat, they would probably do it more likely.
yeah. The Stanford prison experience. Oh, did you? Yeah, I don't know. So what was I gonna say? The What were we talking about? Oh, the Stanford prison experiment
Yeah.
apparently isn't valid. That they were not able to replicate that one, and so I was taught not to teach about that one. So
Oh, really? So I
yeah.
have the book, it's Lucifer Effect. I haven't read it yet. It's the two things Zimbardo's really known about is the Stanford experiment and his work on video games and their effects on young people, which I think is definitely wrong about that one. I don't think there's any correlation between video games and violence or sexual deficiency or anything like that.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that one. Um,
Yeah.
I think I've heard people say that there's no connection, but I don't know.
Well, I've looked at a few studies. There doesn't seem to be any correlation between them. I mean, especially like with Steven Pinker's, I think it was Better Angels of Our Nature, where he talks about like over the centuries, how violence continuously has been decreasing, but we also have like nowadays we have video games, but violence is still going downhill. There's always some kind of scapegoat people like to blame for every generation. Back then it was mu Marilyn Manson's music. That's why kids shot up Columbine. Got gun access now. I'm agnostic on gun control, but that's a common one people like to blame violence on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Um, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I do think mental health resources is extremely important. I mean, that's just me though.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, I don't know as far as like games and movies and stuff. I don't know. I feel like, I mean, I played video games when I was a child, and I don't know that I was more violent because of it or something. No, I didn't particularly like the more violent ones, anyways. But yeah,
In my opinion, I don't think kids under the age of 12 should be playing GTA, for example. We're- I
what's
will,
that? Oh, GTA, like Grand Theft
yeah,
Auto.
yeah, because they
Oh
literally have
yeah.
strip
I
clubs.
mean, yeah, I mean, GTA's got there's a lot of stuff in GTA.
Yeah,
That's
that's
not
one
perfect for
thing I
kids for
wouldn't let
sure.
kids play, but maybe 13 or older.
Mm, yeah. I would say that one's a little bit. There's a lot there for sure. Though. There's more than just violence. There's more going on than just than just violence in GTA for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing that always bothers me though, what's the difference between forensic psychology, criminal psychology, and criminology? If you happen to know.
I don't know. I did
Yeah.
meet somebody who was a forensic psychologist once, so she would probably know. But
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. That would be that's I don't know. So at my school, forensic psychology is not something that we do here. I don't
Yeah.
think we do that here at all. And so there's probably universities that have forensic psychology departments that specialize in that.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know if that's like. I mean, so part of me wonders if like forensic psychology, to me, that sounds like analyzing crime scenes after the fact. And then what was the other term? Crime psychology? Is that what you said?
Oh, criminal psychology. Yeah.
Oh, criminal psychology. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. There might be overlap or something, but I don't really know.
Because like I always think like criminal psychology is studying like what's psychologically wrong with a criminal, and I'm thinking criminology is like the motives. So that's what it sounds like to me. I don't know if I got that right because the
Yeah,
only
it could be one's like more of like a sociology level where it's kind of like a population level analysis, and then maybe the other one's more of like an individual sort of analysis, something like that, maybe. Because
yeah, I guess it
you
makes
could
sense.
like you could study mental illness at the level of the person, of the individual, but then you could study mental illness at the level of the population, like how much of percent of the population is diagnosed with certain things, or what effect it's having on communities or something like that. So there could be some sort of difference like that.
Like the difference between like a case study and like a whole trial, basically.
Maybe.
So who's your favorite psychologist? Because I know you said B.F. Skinner once. Is there a reason for that?
Did I say that once? Um, Favorite psychologist? BF Skinner is the one that I'm most interested in and that I've learned the most about, I'd say. I am interested in, so there's different approaches to understanding psychology or different approaches to psychology broadly. And the site types, the approach or the types of approach that I'm interested in are more about having a materialist perspective, like thinking about behavior in terms of like material reality. And so B.F. Skinner is more in that realm, um, as opposed to studying the hidden structures of the mind, or like because like if you think about what one of the problems with psychology is that the mind is something that's kind of immaterial, and so historically there's this question like can we scientifically study something that's immaterial like the mind, and so uh, there's kind of one school of thought that says that you can, and that's more of a European perspective, uh, and it was called structuralism. And I'm still learning about this, but as far as I understand, structuralism might be something. I think like Freud's id, ego, and superego. I think those might be examples of a structuralist approach, where it's like, well, what are those? Where does the id and the ego exist? It doesn't. They don't necessarily exist in a material sense. Um, and then the more materialist perspective is more of an American perspective, um, or sometimes materialist or functionalist is another term that's kind of related. And so people like Edward Thorndike and John Watson and B.F. Skinner or are more of these functionalist, materialist sort of perspectives.
Yeah, how do you feel about Freud? Because everybody I know seems to hate him.
It seems like people who are in clinical psychology tend to like Freud a lot more.
Really.
My experience is that people here do not like Freud, and as I understand historically, so Freud is European, and
Hmm.
there's like a beef between the European psychologists and the American psychologists, and they have different perspectives and approaches. And the that materialist perspective, the more another term you could use, which it's not the same as materialist, but they're kind of related, is this sort of empirical approach as well, where they're saying that at least early on, I can talk about this in more detail, but early on they're saying that the only things that can be subjects of scientific investigation are things that we can experience through our senses directly. And then if we can't experience it through our senses directly, like seeing or hearing or something like that, then it's not something that can be investigated through the scientific method. Um, and so the psychologists that had that perspective dislike things like Freud because Freud is not. you can't see the id and the ego and the superego and stuff, and so they dislike those perspectives, and so they're very critical historically of those sort of approaches. But the way that I see it is that with clinical psychology, I think there's a lot of problems with clinical psychology, uh, but also their goals are a little different. And so with
Mhm.
clinical psychology, they're trying to like understand the human condition and diagnose, treat, identify mental illness. Um, Whereas the people who have this more empirical um, science, behavioral science, sometimes the terms behaviorist or behavioral scientist are used. Um, they're more interested in just understanding how behavior works fundamentally, and they're not necessarily concerned with treating conditions. And so they have different kind of goals as well.
Yeah, it's like with Freud, he always did seem a little bit on the philosophical side rather than like the whole materialistic scientist side. I do know
Yes,
he credited Friedrich Nietzsche as an influence, but as far as I know, he didn't actually read Nietzsche. Personally, I love
I don't
Nietzsche,
know.
but
Yeah, I don't know much about him either. I don't know. I know like Jordan Peterson likes to talk about him a lot, so but I know almost nothing.
yeah, Jordan Peterson, he likes to talk a lot about a lot of existentialists. His favorite, as
Hmm.
far as I remember, is Dostoevsky. Um, Never read
Oh
Dostoevsky.
yeah, him too. I don't know about that either now. There's so many things I'd like to learn, but I have like low brain power and low brain power and uh or not brain power, but I don't know. There's like I only have capacity for so much.
Well, I definitely consider Nietzsche an early psychologist. I do. He
Hmm.
has been credited by Carl Jung as well, and Carl Jung actually read Nietzsche and lectured him. So I do consider him one of the first ones. Same with William James and Soren Kierkegaard. They're definitely psychologists to me.
Hmm.
Although I
Well,
do,
William James is yeah. I mean, William James is as far as I understand, William James is the first person to teach psychology in the United States. But Edward Thorndike, I believe, is the first person to receive a degree in psychology, a PhD in psychology. Um, so they're both early American psychologists. But people like William James and other early American psychologists are trained in Europe. So they are
oh,
trained and get their degree in Europe, and then they come back to the United States. But Edward Thorndike is trained in the United States. And so in some ways, Edward Thorndike is like the first like fully uh, American psychology. And there's a couple other people that are early psychologists as well.
okay. Well, I never read his works, so I don't have an opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so people like Freud and Carl Jung are I think more famous or more well known to the general
Yeah.
public, but they're both in the same school of thought. Because
Mm.
Carl Jung is like Freud's protege, and so they're both in the same sort of approach. And something I was going to say earlier is that so early psychology is like philosophy kind of, but also Freud, he has like a medical model approach, and so he calls himself a neurologist early on, before the psychoanalyst stuff. But yeah, he calls himself a neurologist, and so that's another element that's a little different is that they have this sort of case study medical model sort of approach, which is very different from the the approach of the behaviorist in the United States.
Well, he and Carl Jung did have a split at some point because of their differences, shall we say.
Yeah, I think I don't know that much about either of them, but I think originally it was like Freud was supposed to be, I'm sorry, Carl Jung was supposed to be Freud's heir, sort of,
Yeah.
and or like intellectual heir, but then he kind of disagreed on some things, and so we have Carl Jung and we have the other neo-Freudians, which they take some of Freud's ideas and they kind of tweak them a little bit, but they're based on the psychoanalysis sort of ideas.
Yeah, they also differentiated on their views on religion and God. Because I remember Freud had this
Yeah,
idea
is
that
it
God was like this father figure that people are lacking in their lives. It was,
something like that? That sounds right.
yeah. It was
But I don't know much about him.
Well, he's just the guy everybody loves to hate because of his weird sex complex.
Yeah, yeah, he does. Yeah, he's definitely into that for sure.
He was a
For sure.
what was it called? The School of Hermeneutics. It was always Nietzsche, Marx, and Freud. Just like why do people have religion? And those were like the ones people always had like what their different ideas were. But looking back, that sounds like just the original version of New Atheists before the New Atheists became a thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I know that there's also like is it is it like Marxist psychoanalytics or something? There's some like Freud Marx
Yeah, Freud
perspectives
was
blended
Marxism.
together.
Yeah,
Something like that, yeah. And I don't know much about that, but I've heard it
me
before.
neither.
But it's
Who
like a
was it?
whole it's a whole different school of psychology.
Who was it like Lacan or something or Althus or whatever? I forgot who it was. Who I just know there are a lot of names. I know Slavoj Zizek's pretty big on that shit because he's pretty into Lacan. I don't know if I'm saying the name right,
I
but
don't know. I'm not familiar. Not familiar.
we need to get more
Very close.
we need to get more psychologists trying to explain wokeness, man. You just gotta be like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah, I wonder what they would say about it. I wonder what they would say about it. I don't know.
It's like uh just on my anecdotal experiences, it seems like there's in my classes there seems to be a lot of let's say questionable stuff I've heard from my classes, especially
Hmm.
when it comes to like current events. I think it was like 16% of women are experiencing sexual assault on campuses. Another
Hmm.
one that I didn't actually see this. It's just what somebody told me in my class. She's kind of a bitch, so I don't really trust her. But she saw in her
Hmm.
sociology textbook that most sociologists agree on white privilege being a real thing. And when I hear stuff like that, I just find that really hard to believe.
So, I mean, as far as those statistics, I don't know. I'm not sure the validity of those statistics one way or the other, but I think we might have talked about this, or I talked about it with someone.
Yeah, we did, but
I
I thought
feel
this would be
like,
a good time to repeat it.
yeah, no, I think that some of those perspectives are almost like religious sort of perspectives.
Yeah, I agree.
And my I forget the terminology right now, but there's sort of two perspectives in sociology where it's like a functional, and it's kind of similar to psychology in some ways, but there's a functionalist approach where the the goal is to just try to describe things objectively. And then there's the other approach, which is like more of Marx's approach, I think, and um, I forget the other early sociologist, but it's like the critical theory type of approach, which to me, um, those ideas are in that family of that sort of school of thought, and to me, they have a more of a religious component, and the perspective is that like that we shouldn't be just describing what is, but we should be like trying to make the world a certain way, or we should be like trying to like make everybody equal or something. And so those are two different perspectives. Um, I do think that there is something to say about the difference between just objectively describing the world and then trying to make the world a better place. I mean, I think that there's some validity to that perspective, but I definitely think that it also has a religious. I mean, Christians also feel like they're making the world a better place,
Oh
so there's
yeah.
definitely some similarities there, especially with like utopian ideas that sometimes go with
Yeah, it's kind of like I'm just loosely quoting Camus here. It's kind of a spiritual snobbery, to think like their ideology is the one that's best for everybody. It's a bit of a one glove fits all type of thing. It's not really it's weird because like they seem to be so convinced that their ideas are true, but and if somebody challenges them or disagrees with them, they take that as some kind of personal attack. Like the act of disagreeing is some kind of ad
it.
hominem. That they're gonna have to raise their
Oh yeah, no,
voices and just try to talk over you and yelling, if you yell back or talk back, you're somehow it's your fault. You're making it worse.
I do think that there's at least with some people, some people more than others for sure. There's like a there's something very similar to how they behave when compared to like Christian fundamentals,
Yeah.
religious zealotry. I feel like there's a lot of similarities there for sure. The
Mm.
intolerance, the utopian ideology, and intolerance of um, any sort of questioning or conflict or opposition. Like there's no room for any of that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, you ever heard of Lee McIntyre? Yeah.
It doesn't sound familiar. Who are they?
He wrote a book a few years ago called How to Talk to a Science Denier. He was on the Michael Shermer show to talk about it. Basically what he
Okay.
did was he started spending time with like anti-vaxxers and these flat earthers and like trying to see like what they believe and why they believe and how these people started getting like more involved in this kind of belief system. And he kind of came to the conclusion that even though like these beliefs are clearly dumb, a large majority of these people used to believe the earth was round and they used to believe vaccines work, but the moment they started interacting with these guys and they started like getting disagreed with, it was the way they were being argued against. Like the basically the debate style that was just owning them, I guess you could say. That really convinced them that they were wrong about the earth being round. So
Yeah,
it's
I don't
like
know, but I don't know the flat earthers. I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of that. How much of that is serious?
I'm just
How
wondering like
much of it is just how much of it is trolling on the internet? I have no idea.
because it just seems like you can convince anybody of anything stupid as long as you just give them a reason to give a fuck, really.
I guess I don't know.
Like they're literally denying things in front of them just because somebody argued better than them. It's weird.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that there is probably, I mean, there's definitely more that goes into people's beliefs and perspectives than just factual factual information for sure. Yeah, I agree with that.
So, personal question, how'd you get involved with AFL?
How did I get involved with AFL?
Yeah.
I think I I I think I saw a post on social media at one time, and then I saw on somewhere on social media, I think I responded to something asking about it, and then Thomas messaged
Oh, nice.
me. Oh, mhm. So yeah, I'm not sure if I responded to Thomas or if I responded to like a generic AFL post. I think I responded to like someone else independently. That was like uh, posting about something that was related, and then Thomas responded, but with AFL stuff. And I had
Oh,
seen AFL post before, but that was I hadn't like investigated it at all because there's so many accounts and posts that you can't investigate all of it.
okay.
So
Oh, were you like getting active in some kind of other activism before AFL, or was this like your first time?
um, I mean, I'm not sure. I feel like I don't really think about terms things in terms of activism per se. But I guess that might be an accurate term. Um, I would say that because of my religious background, I feel like in some ways I was trained to be like an activist for like for like God's kingdom or something. Because like at least in the religion I was born into, you're supposed to preach and make converts and stuff like that. And so that's kind of similar to activism. I feel like activism is you're trying to preach and make converts, right? And so I think a lot of people when they leave religion, they have a similar sort of activist mindset where they feel like they have a mission that they need to do something. So I feel that way too. I do think that's true of me at some level. But I before AFL, I was not involved with other groups as much as AFL. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I don't do a ton with AFL either, but um, I did go to humanist meetings. Like
Mm.
there's like local humanist groups, which is kind of similar, um, but only a little bit. But I stopped associating with them because of their politics, like politics slash extremist views.
So like, were you politically on the left beforehand, or were you always kind of like a bit in the middle? Always thought there was something wrong with the far left, something wrong with the far right, and just, or did something just make you see like these humanists and go like, okay, yeah, this is bullshit from the start.
Well, so in the real, so I'm not sure if we talked in my past before, but I was born to the Jehovah's Witnesses religion, and they teach that members are supposed to be politically neutral, and so for this was the case for me, and I think it's the case for most Jehovah's Witnesses, that I knew absolutely nothing about politics. Um, and they're not supposed to vote. They're not supposed to talk about politics. They're not supposed to have opinions on political things. They're not supposed to hold office. They're not supposed to register to vote. All of that. And so when I left the religion, like it's a little bit of a range, but like 2014 to like 2015, 16 sort of range. I knew absolutely nothing about politics. And so if you had asked me back when I like officially left at the end of 2015, if Obama was a Republican or a Democrat, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. I would not have been able to tell you. And like if you had asked me about like what the two sides, like what perspectives they have on abortion, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. I know a lot of people who are involved in politics. This is like very obvious things to them, right? But I would not have known. But that being said, um, kind of two things developed is I think that a lot of people when they leave religion, they become like very extreme sort of left wing perspectives because they see fundamentalist religion as the opposite of like left wing ideology or progressive ideology or whatever, however you want to call it. And so I was like that for a little while. I was like that for maybe a year or so. Um, but I saw how toxic people's behavior was, and just like logical inconsistencies and hostility. And I actually think that um, some of this left wing slash progressive slash whatever terminology you want to call it is actually quite similar to the beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses. I know that people tend to view them as opposites, but I think that there's a lot of parallels actually. Um, and Yeah, I think there's a lot of parallels. And so in some ways, I think people leave religion or they like leave Jehovah's Witnesses and they become these sort of left-wing activist types. And I think they view it as the opposite, but I think maybe in reality, um, it feels familiar to them.
Mm.
And so it's actually, I think, in some ways similar to it. I think a lot of people view it as a more truer version of the religion that they belong to. So it's like they believe these things in the religion, and then they find out that the religion isn't quite what it presents to be, or the organization isn't quite what it says that it is, and now they believe that these new sort of left wing ideas they have, these are the truth, these are the truer version of the things they believed previously. Um, and so I feel like I was in that realm for maybe a year or so, a year and a half or something like that. But I was treated so nasty online. So they're so awful. And it was just for very very slight, not even disagreements, not even disagreements. It was just like I just wasn't saying things that were in line enough with the dogmatic message of the day, and you're not allowed to deviate at all without severe repercussions. Um, and so I had multiple waves of accidentally slightly disagreeing with progressive ideology and having this like wave of attacks and insults and absolutely horrific behavior. Um, and Yeah, something's wrong with that. Um, I also So I've had several waves of that, and it kind of mixed in while I was experiencing those waves. Trump became president, and that was another wave where Trump became president, and I posted that I was shocked he became president, and I was attacked. I was attacked for saying that, and they were like, "You're a white man. You have no right to talk about this." And I'm like, but like we're on the same side. Why are you attacking me? Um, but well, where was I going with this? There was waves of attacks, and then it'll come back to me.
Okay.
Oh, another part of it was that I kind of just curious person, and so Trump became president, and I thought Trump was a joke. Like it seemed like a joke. Like I don't know, it
Mhm.
just didn't seem like he was like ever like a valid candidate for presidency. Um, and so I was curious, like why do people like Trump? And I wanted to genuinely know like what it is that people like, what people's perspectives are. And so I remember asking my coworkers, like, can you tell me, like, what are your thoughts? Like, why do people like what is the other side of the story here? And I mean, you tend to get answers like, well, people are evil and people are dumb, and these like very like um, sort of tribal sort of answers. And I didn't like that. The other thing I didn't like was I was watching the news. I was learning to watch the news and stuff because I had never watched that stuff before. And I watched Rachel Maddow's Trump Russia Gate stuff. Do you remember that? Do you remember all that?
Yeah.
And so I watched all of that, like every single Rachel Maddow episode. Um, and so and I wasn't necessarily like strongly in agreement. I was just kind of open. Like I'm just curious. I want to understand the perspective. I want to understand what's happening in the world. But one of the things that I started to notice around, I think it was after the RussiaGate saga, is I started to watch some of the original content. So I watched some of Trump's speeches, or I watched the original footage of whatever it was that was happening, and then I saw um, the media coverage of the event. And the one that I remember, like what this happened like kind of gradually over several different things, but the one I remember was Trump had a Fourth of July celebration at Mount Rushmore,
Hmm.
and I watched that original because ever like that this is all they talk about is Trump, and so I'm like, all right, like I just want to see this for myself, right? And so I watched that Fourth of July celebration, or I watched some of it at least, and if anything, it was boring. Like there was nothing to me, there was nothing that unusual or outlandish. I mean, and Trump does say things that are that are unusual. He does
Yeah.
say things that are outlandish, but I watched a little bit of that, and I watched a little bit of the Fourth of July ceremony at Mount Rushmore, and it seemed very basic, very typical. It didn't seem like anything unusual. And then I saw the media coverage, and they were like, it's like KKK rally, and they were like Trump's Fourth of July celebration is dark and foreboding, and I'm like, well, what is going? To me, that's not a fair assessment of what that was. Like that was, if anything, it was boring. Like I mean, there's nothing to talk about. I don't know. I didn't watch the whole thing, but from what I did watch, it wasn't dark and foreboding. It wasn't some sort of white supremacy rally. At least not that I could see. That didn't seem like a an honest interpretation of events. And so I really dislike when people lie. Like I think there's plenty of things to dislike about Trump, but I feel like you don't need to be making things up.
Yeah.
And same thing happens with my religion, where there's plenty of problems with the religion that I was born into, but sometimes ex-witnesses, former Jehovah's Witnesses, they'll like make up stuff about the religion. And to me, I'm very opposed to that. I feel like we should try to strive to have some sort of objective um, interpretation of our past of the religion, and other people don't see it that way. They're like, well, if we all dislike the religion, then I can just say whatever I want as long as it's negative. And if you disagree with the negative thing that I'm saying, well, then you're like a sympathizer or something. You're an apologist. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, I disagree with those perspectives. And the media does that a lot, where they're really dramatic about everything Trump does. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes there's stuff there that's I think warrants criticism, but a lot of the times they're making stuff up as far as I could see. Um, and I dislike that. So that's what kind of those sorts of things shifted me away from those perspectives. There was also uh, an instance on CNN where they said that if you're something about if you're white and you say that you're mixed race or that you have like mixed race features, that's racist. And like my family has mixed race ancestry, and like that's just a fact. That's just like a factual thing. Like that's like to me that made me very angry when I heard CNN saying that. And so when I saw that news coverage, I unfollowed CNN and MSNBC. We're done. We're done. We're done here, guys. And so that's the story of my. There's probably some more details, but like that's the overall story.
Yeah, when it comes to CNN, I think probably their most famous moment was the fiery but mostly peaceful protests.
I I had already been very skeptical and critical of CNN by that time, but yeah, the fiery but mostly peaceful. But it's the same example. Same example. Like there's literally a fire. There's like a giant fire in the background.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
It reminded me of that meme with like the dog and he just goes, "This is fine." That's what it
Everything's
reminded me
fine.
of.
Yeah, this is fine. Yeah, yeah. I know that one. Yeah. So, and I think it hasn't gotten any better. If anything, it's gotten worse, I think,
Yeah. Yeah, in Portland.
fortunately.
I remember they
Fortunately.
took away guns from police and then the shootings went just skyrocketed, which is really bad because
Where,
it was all
where was this?
in Portland. It was
Oh, in
Ted
Portland.
Wheeler. Yeah, Ted
Oh,
Wheeler
oh,
defund.
is this the Chad? Is this the Chad story arc? The Chaz or whatever it was? Same, is this the same thing?
Oh, which has the Capitol Hill
Yeah.
Autonomous Zone. Yeah, it was around that time. A lot of stuff happened. I remember. I think it was Chaz. It was those two teenage boys accidentally drove into the area and ended up getting shot. Then Antifa
Oh,
members
I don't
started.
know.
Yeah, Antifa members started saying those were actually two white supremacists they shot up, but they were actually two black teenage boys. Um,
Hmm. There's
uh,
so many stories that you forget all the details, but I probably that sounds vaguely familiar, but there's
well,
just been so much that's happened.
well, what happened next was Trump privately called the boys' father to offer his condolences. I remember that story just getting some attention. Not many details.
Hmm.
It was a bit more detailed and unmasked by Andy Now. I'm not sure if you've read that book. I personally liked it.
I have not. No, I haven't read that one.
Yeah, I like
So
Andy Now.
so interesting. Interestingly, some of my former friends, so after I left the religion, I made friends, but they were all like extreme left-wing perspective. And I think some of them were Antifa people. Like that
Really.
they would travel from what I know, they call themselves communists and communists or socialists, sometimes the terms are interchangeable, sometimes they're not. And they would, from what I gather, they travel around the country and like go to protests and riots and stuff. Mhm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my friends were like, my friends were like that.
I only know one person who I can genuinely say is like openly far left. I knew her in elementary school. I contacted her on Twitter when I was in high school, and we barely talked since. She like barely returned my text, but she did eventually give me her number at some point and still ghosted me. She
Mm,
basically texted me back like once or twice a year. Yeah, she was definitely like a far left communist hippie eco environmentalist freak. Um, a funny story. This has nothing to do with her politics, but just one night at 5 a.m., she drunk called me and left a voice message telling me she's been thinking about me and she wants to talk soon. And then she blocked my number.
hmm. That's weird.
That was
So
weird.
wait, so you were close friends with this person in school?
I
Is that
wasn't
is
close
that
with her. We were just friendly.
so you
Uh,
were never close friends? Interesting.
no, we just knew each other as
Hmm.
kids. So I tried being friendly with her again and as teenagers, but she just doesn't text back. And I still have her Instagram. but she still like barely texts me, like just rarely ever.
Mm,
Only like once she's texted
yeah,
me.
it's probably better to leave it that way.
Yeah, she's definitely got a lot of like far left stuff. I remember one time she just uploaded this giant canister of ketchup, and she had like this little papers stuck on it that read "Blood of the Bourgeoisie," and
That's definitely a Marxist sort of sort of perspective for sure.
yeah, definitely a red flag right there. I have this one friend. He and I sometimes just make jokes about her. She has this not gonna lie, this ugly ass boyfriend who kind of looks like Justin Bieber. They
Excuse me.
their latest picture together was they were both wearing tutus, both of them. And my friend and I I sent it to him and we just could not stop like roasting this guy in our text. Like, I just could not stop. It was just so funny to me.
Yeah, people have different perspectives different perspectives on things for sure. Um, have you have you read have you read the because you mentioned Blood of the Bourgeoisie? Have you read the Communist Manifesto?
I have not. I bought that when I was 16 and I still haven't picked it up. It's in my shelf. It's waiting
It's
for
pretty
me.
short. It's pretty short. Yeah, how thick? So I listened to it on audio, but how thick is the book that you have? It seems like it's a relatively small book, like a brochure or something, I think.
Well, I bought the portable marks, so it's in there, but it's also like a bunch of his other
Oh,
writings, like the Jewish question.
gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, yeah. I think it's like, I think the Communist Manifesto is actually pretty short.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
30, 40 pages,
but
I think.
yeah, I'm not sure, but it's not huge. Um, but yeah, I read that, and then we have a like a communist Marxist book club at our university that I've been to because I want to hear them tell me what their perspectives are. Um, but it does. There's a lot of very utopian um, thinking going on for sure.
Yeah, I was about to say something. Uh, I was pretty into the like older 20th century anti-communist writings, like from people like Albert Camus and George Orwell and H.L. Mencken.
Mhm.
I liked hearing the older critics of communism, especially Orwell with 1984 because he was clearly a left-wing socialist.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if you read 1984, but there are moments where he's
I have,
talking.
I have.
Yeah, so yeah, there are moments where he talks shit about capitalists, but like this whole book is basically about how terrible communism is.
Yeah, so I think my understand so it's weird because there's many different groups that will call themselves socialist. And so it's not always clear what that means. The different groups will call themselves progressive too, and it's not always clear what that means. And so I think that he calls himself a social democrat, I think is what, or something like that.
So yeah,
And
something like
but
that.
I think 1984 is meant to be a criticism of both um, Germany and Russia, um, which both consider themselves to be socialist as well. As well, so that's very confusing, the terminology. And then there's also English. There's like English British socialists as well, um, and it's very I don't know. It's very confusing. I'm not sure what to make of all of those terms because it seems like it's all over the place somehow.
Yeah, just when it comes to politics, it feels like people just throw words around, like the libertarian
Mm-hmm.
socialists, the
Yeah,
anarcho-capitalists, the anarcho-syndicalists, the anarcho-monarchists. I've heard the word egalitarian, libertarian, and authoritarian libertarian.
yeah. There's also I've heard communitarian.
Yeah, that one too. It's like the opposite of individualism,
Community.
but it's also
Yeah,
there's
so I don't
also
know.
collectivism.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to make of all of it. I feel
Well,
like you have to have the person define what they mean. Otherwise, it's hard to know what they mean by it.
It's basically whatever the fuck I want it to mean at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe we should just pay attention to Max Stirner and his ideas of phantoms of the mind. They're all just made up bullshit. Just fucking go with it.
Who is that? I don't think I'm familiar with who that is.
Max Stirner, he was a German philosopher. He
Okay.
was he was mostly most known for his works on egoism, which is the only label he
Mm,
really had. But a lot of people do consider him like an existentialist and a nihilist and an individualist anarchist. But really, the only thing he ever called himself was an egoist. And uh,
mm,
I think he personally knew Karl Marx, but
mm,
he clearly wasn't a fan of socialism or government. And basically, his idea of
mm,
spooks or phantoms, depending on the translation, is that they're just, spooks of the mind. They're in your head. The government doesn't really have any power. Your rights don't really exist. Equality doesn't exist. Religion is clearly nonsense. Money, currency that has no real power. They just have this illusion that they have power because we made them up. We gave them power. It's artificial. They don't actually exist. So,
mm.
less,
Yeah, I'll have to look him up because I don't think I've heard of him before.
yeah, I'm sympathetic, but his idea of like this, he is kind of like an anarcho-individualist, but his idea on property is
Okay.
that if you could you have to fight for your property, which is kind of libertarian, but it's also um if somebody could just take it from you, then they deserve it, and I just don't like that. I mean, yeah, laws are bullshit, and we made them up, but we need them, in my opinion. I'm not a big
Mm,
fan
yeah,
of
that is kind of a libertarian perspective, it seems like. At least from what I understand. Libertarianism, for sure.
he was, but he was definitely not a capitalist.
Mm, interesting.
Yeah, if property is a thing, it doesn't exist in its philosophy. It's not real. We made that up, which is true, but
Mm,
just because something's an illusion doesn't mean it's, not completely necessary.
mm, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think that people have been fighting for control of resources
Hmm.
for before there was humans, and so I think that just trying to control resources is a thing that other species do too. So I think that
Yeah.
I think that's what property is resources that are you're controlling at some level. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure about that one.
Well, I mean, nature's violent. It's
That's true.
horrible.
That is true. Yeah,
The, if you're
yeah,
gonna have
that's
to
for sure.
survive, if you're gonna have to survive, some other species might have to die.
I mean, that's yeah. If you're especially if you're eating other animals. So I mean, even if you're eating plant, you're still eating something that's living.
Yeah, and there's also parasites, which is kind of really weird to think about. I remember my brother, he had a phase where he was interested in parasites. 'Cause- And I remember one that freaked me out. It affected, I think it was like cats, and it affected cows or cattle or whatever. And some of them, the parasites could like end up in their meat, and you have to make sure you cook it properly. Make sure you're not consuming
Hmm.
red meat, because if you consume it while it's still red, it'll affect humans. And if you're infected with
Is
that
that like
parasite,
mad cow disease or something?
I forgot what it was called.
I think mad cow disease is prions disease or something like that. It's some sort of like protein that's causing the problem, not a parasite, I think, but I'm not sure on that one.
Well, I saw this like 11 years ago. I was a kid, so I just remember freaking me out. So I probably have
Yeah,
some
no,
facts wrong.
yeah, no, no, it's okay. The yeah, the idea of having parasites is kind of creepy. That there could be like like parasites, like you could have worms living inside you
Hmm.
and not even know it necessarily. Yeah, I don't like that idea.
We gotta get those. We gotta mandate those MRI scans.
What can you find parasites with MRIs? I mean, I guess maybe some of them.
I have no idea how tiny. Actually, I want to know. Like, can you actually see that? Because you can see certain things with MRI.
Some parasites are like literally worms. Like they look like a worm. And then some, I think some parasites are probably too small to see. I don't know. But but yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know what you. I think that they probably look for. It probably depends on the parasite, but they probably look for like eggs or something, or just like the organisms themselves, like under a microscope, is what I would think. But I don't know.
You know, think about it. It's not like we actually really think about what they even like look like, close up. I mean, you can easily find some videos, but none of us really. If I asked you to draw a parasite, like you probably just have to take a guess on it.
I would draw a worm. I would draw a worm is what I would draw.
I
I
mean,
mean, there's definitely things that are not worms that are parasites, but though what I think of when I think of parasites, I think of worms, and they look like they're just like white worms, different sizes.
yeah,
I mean,
you
there's one
kind
that's really
of.
awful that lives in. I'm sorry.
I was about to say, from what I can remember, kind of looked like a bit like a maggot, a bit, kind of like a maggot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly the definition of parasite, but there's bot flies. They might be I'm not sure if that's considered parasitism, but they'll lay an egg and then the maggot, the larva, eats your flesh and lives in your skin. And then it like completely develops and then emerges into another fly. I think they tend to live on farm animals though, but people and
Mhm.
cats and dogs can get them too. And it's absolutely, if you've never seen it, it's absolutely horrific. Um, there's another one which I think is endemic to parts of Africa. Um, and I forget what it's called. It's called like something like fireworm or dragon worm or something. And
Mhm.
I think it lives in your cardiovascular system, like in your veins and arteries. It's a worm. And then it'll like, once it matures, it comes out of your leg or your foot and it'll like emerge. And then they tie it around a stick and they like wind it up and slowly pull it out. And I guess it burns as it comes out, but it's just absolutely horrific. It's so horrific. I'm thankful that we don't have those things here because that just seems awful.
Was there like three types of symbiotic relationships? There's like the parasitic where one benefits and the other gets harmed. There's the mutualistic
Yeah.
where both are benefiting. There's a third one where it's one's benefiting but nothing's really happening to the other.
Oh,
Or I forgot what that one was. Is
yeah.
that
I feel like I do know the term, but I'm not sure. Not sure where it's because symbiotic is when they're both benefiting,
oh
and
okay.
then I
Or
think that's what symbiotic is.
well that one it's mutualistic when they both benefit, I think.
Yeah,
It's like I'm not sure if
but
that's like a scientific
I don't.
term.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But I feel like I've learned about that before, but off the top of my head, I can't think of what it is. So you think symbiotic is like a generic term, maybe?
I think like symbiotic is the whole, yeah, like the whole thing and just in general, like
Hmm.
one living off another.
In my mind, it has to do with like the mutually beneficial element of it, but I'm not super certain on that one.
There's like
Not sure.
one thing that kind of creeped me out with the cuckoo birds, how they're actually pretty parasitic.
Hmm. Yeah, they're like a brood parasite, I think they call them. Those are pretty cool. I've done some projects on those.
Yeah, they kind of creeped
Uh,
me out when I first learned about them. Like the idea of them laying their eggs inside a different bird's nest, and then when it hatches, it just pushes out the other ones. That's just pretty dark.
yeah, for sure. For sure. It's wild. Excuse me. Oh yeah, so the terms. So I think you're right. So it seems like symbiosis just has to do with the relationship of the two organisms broadly. And then there's mutualism where both species benefit.
Mhm.
There's commensalism, which is where one benefits but the other is unaffected. And there's
Oh, okay.
parasitism, which is one benefits, one is harmed. I would never have guessed that, but I have learned about that at some point. Commensalism. That's interesting. that I was thinking that symbiotic meant mutually beneficial, but I was wrong. Yeah, interesting.
Symbiotic just makes me think of Spider-Man
Why is that?
because of the symbiote, the black suit. They call it
Oh,
symbiotes.
I guess. Oh, I don't know. I guess I don't know. Oh, you mean like is that like that was it? Venom? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because when I
yeah,
first
yeah,
got
yeah.
in,
Yeah.
but I remember they did eventually start changing it to a parasite in the Ultimate Comics reboot, and even though the story was a bit different on that one. They always do the weirdest shit with us with Venom and Spider-Man storylines. They're like almost kind of gay. Really. The symbiote just really
Oh,
loved Spider-Man and
oh,
wanted to do
I don't
anything.
know. I don't know anything about it. I didn't realize that that Venom liked Spider-Man. I don't know what the story is. I just to
Well,
my mind, he's just an evil Spider-Man. But I guess I don't know anything about it.
well, the Venom symbiote itself is just really loves him, and when Peter tried to get rid of it, it basically tried like killing it with sound waves. So when Peter was knocked out, it decided to just drag his unconscious body away and just fell on the tower just so it could die, so Peter could live. But it accidentally landed on Eddie Brock, and Eddie Brock is like suicidal and has hatred towards Spider-Man. So when they bonded, he kind of like both have this mutual hatred for him now. So that's basically
Mm-hmm.
all there was to it.
So so Spider does Spider-Man turn into Venom?
No, it's
No, I don't. It's been a long time. I forget. I
they
forget.
had like some storylines where he kind of becomes Venom in a way, but it never actually becomes like, turns into like the monster looking thing for a storyline.
I got you.
But yeah, there's also the new video game on PS5, which,
I used to play video games a lot, but I don't follow it anymore at all.
yeah, me neither, especially since the new consoles are like $500 and barely any games. And I'm not gonna
I
spend like
know.
$560 just to play one game.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. I have Switch, but it feels like there's not a ton of games for it. Is what it feels like to me.
Yeah, just stick with the PS2, you'll be fine.
I did have a PS2 when it came out. I remember playing Final Fantasy X. I think was our first game. That was really good.
Hey, nothing final about that game.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think we've talked long enough, so I'm gonna just
Yeah, I
end
think
this just four simple questions, just for fun,
sure, for sure.
4 or 5. So I'm just first, who's your favorite US president?
I have no
No?
because of my background growing up. I never. I mean, I learned about presidents growing up, but I don't really have a favorite one. I wouldn't be able to pick anybody.
Okay, I'm gonna say Lincoln. It's Lincoln.
You guys
Your
say
favorite
Lincoln,
president is
okay?
Lincoln now.
The answer is Lincoln.
It's
Okay.
well, second question is gonna be about the same, but I think we have a similar problem. I was gonna ask who's your favorite founding father?
The one that if I can remember one of them, it would be the one that I remember.
All
Yeah, I guess
right.
I don't have a strong perspective on that either.
All right, we'll say Thomas Paine because he didn't have slaves. The only one.
Okay. I was gonna say Thomas Paine because I feel like he's one of the only ones that I so there's like Thomas Paine and John Hancock one of the I guess
Yes.
I'm not sure if I know who they are even. He,
Uh,
is Benjamin Franklin considered one of them too?
yeah, he's one of the big ones.
It's been a it's been such a long time since I mean I definitely studied this like in elementary school, but it's been a long time.
If you've ever played Assassin's Creed 3 on the PS3, you might start getting more interested. I played that when I was a kid, and it took place during like the American Revolution, so that kind of got me interested as a kid. But yeah, the only
Okay,
thing I know about
that's cool.
Hancock
Cool.
was he wrote a really big signature.
Yeah, right.
That's all I could say.
Yeah, I feel like John Hancock, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Paine. And then I want to say Sam Adams, but it's not Sam Adams, John Adams.
Well, both actually, the
Oh,
founding
there's
fathers.
a what's the beer? Is there a beer across from
That's
it?
Samuel Adams, yeah. But Samuel
I
Adams is
thought
founding father. John Adams, he was the second president and a founding father. And I think
so.
his son was the fifth or sixth. I don't remember.
I thought that Sam Adams was like a made up person for some reason. The beer, no, my
No, to be fair, I
huh.
only know him because he's in Assassin's Creed 3.
Okay, there you go, there you go. I think John Adams is one of my ancestors' second cousin.
Oh,
And
really?
so I'm into genealogy. Yeah, I'm into genealogy, and I think that the the closest relationship I have to a president, because John Adams was president, right?
Yeah, he was the second.
Yeah, yeah. I think the closest relationship I have to a president, as far as like genealogy, I think is John Adams, who was a second cousin of one of my ancestors.
Oh, that's pretty cool. If I remember correctly,
So maybe I should say John Adams.
if I remember correctly, he and Jefferson died on the same day.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I knew that. That's
yeah.
interesting.
I think they both died 4th of July, same day, which
Oh, you
is
know what? I think that does sound familiar. That does sound familiar now because it's like symbolic meaning as well.
because I remember because there's the book Thomas Jefferson, Author of America by Christopher Hitchens, and I do not remember much from that book. I just remember finding it extremely boring. As much as
Mm,
I love Hitchens, his writing is kind of boring.
uh,
All right, let's see. I was gonna ask two more questions. All right. Could
sure,
you,
hit me.
all right, what's your favorite book?
My favorite book.
Yes. Add it to my list.
Favorite book. I don't know if I have an answer for this either. Are we talking like fiction or nonfiction?
Anything in general, just like
Anything?
when you would like give a
Let me
10 out
look.
of 10 if you could.
So I I like learning and I like knowledge. I like learning about things, but I do not like reading.
Oh, really?
They seem like they seem like contradictory things, but yeah, I feel like I don't particularly like reading something. But favorite book? I'm not sure I can. So it could be like 1984 or something,
Okay.
maybe something like that. I feel like when I read 1984, I also relate a lot to that with my religious background.
Mhm.
And so that kind of has like significance to me as well. And I feel like there's also 1984 and Brave New World. And Brave New World has a lot of like learning theory, like Pavlov conditioning type stuff in it as well. So I'm interested in all of that. But I would say that 1984 is a book that I resonated more with me just because it seems to relate to my religious background, or at least in my perspective.
Oh, yeah, now I mentioned that book as well. It reminds me, when I decided to read 1984, I decided to buy like a ton of dystopian novels because I got into the idea
Mm.
of like dystopias and how they're basically trying to gaslight the entire population that this is a utopia. It's the best it's gonna get.
Well, so that's interesting commentary. So Skinner writes a book called Walden 2. Have you read that one?
I have not read Skinner at all.
So so um so most of Skinner's books are not fiction, but this one is. It's like a made up place, city that he has, and basically it's just like an imaginary city where people are applying his ideas. It's like his ideas kind of applied to a city, society, and stuff, and very utopian. But as I was listening to it, I was like, is I can't tell if this book is supposed to be utopian or dystopian. Because I mean, Skinner is very much pro a lot of these ideas, I think. And so I was kind of wondering, to me, as I was reading the book, I was like, well, this sounds really dystopian to me. This sounds awful. But I wonder when Skinner was writing it, was he just is was any of his intention to also be critical of these ideas, or is he like solely being pro these ideas? I'm unclear about that. But it made me think about what's the difference between dystopian and utopian, and I feel like they're the same thing. I feel like utopian ideas are dystopian.
Yeah, I guess the real difference is in a utopia you are convinced that it's actually working.
I guess, or maybe the difference is just in that things that you have to do to achieve the utopia are dystopian.
You remember the early 2010s? There was this weird increase in like young adult dystopian films based off books like Hunger Games,
Like
Divergent.
Hunger Games. Yeah, I do. I remember that. Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
watched those.
Yeah, that was a weird phase. They had like a theme about everything. One was about like mazes, one's about like kids trying the Hunger Games, these kids are gonna have to kill each other. I have no idea what the fuck
Yeah,
Divergent was other than
it just
wait,
seemed like Hunger Games to me. I was confused about the.
yeah, that was the same movie actually. Like, what was
Yeah,
Maze
it seems
Runner? It
very
was like
similar.
what was Maze Runner? It was like there was a bunch of kids stuck in a maze and there's only like one female. Well,
Yeah, I think I started watching Maze Runner and I didn't finish it or something. It didn't keep my because isn't it Maze Runner based off of a game? Is it a video game?
I thought it was based off a
I
book.
think. Oh, maybe it might be based off a book. But I think I watched a little bit of it and I lost interest. But I remember watching Divergent, and I feel like even the actress looks like the actress from Hunger Games. Like, and they came out at the same time, I think, too. So to me, I thought that was a
Yeah.
little strange because they seem like the same story to me.
I remember being just in my early teens and I just saw a commercial for Maze Runner and like there's like five guys looking at this unconscious girl and they're like, is this a female? And then I thought, oh no, this isn't gonna end well for her.
So there's no girls in it or something? I don't remember it at all.
I remember the sequel, there was more females. I have no idea what the fuck was going on. I didn't watch any of these movies, just commercials. They're all
Oh,
like
I watched. I feel like Hunger Games was better than Divergent. Yeah, that's what I feel like. Oh, there was also a movie with the train. It was at the same time period, I think. Remember that one?
with a train.
They're like they're on a train and the train is like going around the world, I think, and it's all ice outside. And
Oh,
but
Snowpiercer?
everyone like the popular maybe, and they're just on a train that's like going through this like frozen planet, and like I think the whole population is just on this train that's moving, and it's dystopian as well. I think that
Was it
might be the same time period.
Chris Evans, the guy who played Captain America, if you remember the actor?
Yeah, I think it is Snowpiercer.
I
And like
only
I think the wealthy rich people that live up front.
I only know that because there's this
Yeah,
really
that's
popular theory that Snowpiercer is a sequel to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and the main
I've
bad guy
heard
in
that before.
Snowpiercer is Charlie. And I thought, you know what, I'm only gonna watch this just because of that theory. And I kept
Yeah,
like making
yeah.
with my brother.
I've heard that before. But yeah, that's another dystopian one. And I feel like it might have come around the same time as the others.
I think so too.
2014.
Yeah, I was about to say
2014.
yeah.
Yep.
All right, one more question before we're
All right.
done. I think I already know the answer, if I'm just gonna ask anyways. Are you writing any books by any chance at the moment? Or are you going to?
Mm, I'm not writing books, but I have lots of ideas of writing books. Uh, One thing that I was writing, because I have my school stuff, so I feel like that takes priority over other things. But one thing that I was interested in writing is I'd like to have this like little science kit.
Mhm.
That I actually have a lot of it put together, and I have a lot of the book as well. But it's like a little instruction booklet, and the idea is that it's like a little science kit that teaches you about behavior and learning and how to train a pet mouse. And so it like There's a book that teaches you about all of it, and then also supplies where you can train like a small rodent to follow a target and jump through a little hoop and all of that. And so that's an idea that I'm working on.
All right. All right, yeah, that sounds
So
fun.
there's like a little book on it.
As long as it's
But other than that, I
uh,
don't have it.
as long as you get a few pages down.
Yeah, well, that like I have that almost completely written actually. It's like it hasn't. I need to edit and stuff, but it's fully written.
Because like the only thing that worries me about writing a book, if it's nonfiction, like I gotta do APA format and I have to get like all these sources, but I also have to like tell you when I'm using these sources and when I gotta like format them in a certain way, and I'm just like, oh, God, I really don't want to do that, and I have to do like a lot of research for one chapter, and I just don't
Yeah.
have patience for that, but I'll try eventually.
Um, have you used a citation manager?
I have used those for my college essays.
Yeah, they help a lot. They help a lot because like it just everything's formatted. Well, they have issues sometimes too, but everything's formatted and then it just automatically kind of fills it all out. So they're fantastic. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to survive without those.
Because like when I'm writing AFL articles, I'm not trying to like format them in any way as long as it's like double spaced, Times New Roman, and easy to read. I just put the
Hmm.
links in the text. I don't ever like try to make them APA formatted. It's just want to make sure they're presentable. But like if I have to like
Yeah, well, APA format. I mean, not everything is not APA format. What what AFL should it? I mean, I don't know. We have probably not explored this, but what AFL should have is AFL should have its own standards for formatting and stuff, and then everything should conform to whatever that is. So it doesn't necessarily. Not everything has to be APA. You know, other fields use other standards too. I think like with MLA, MLA is
yeah
one of them.
yeah they don't have
Like
like
English
a
and stuff.
yeah AFL doesn't have anything specific. I just intentionally make
Yeah,
them
no, I
MLA.
know we don't. Yeah,
Yeah,
gotcha. Yeah.
because they're the easiest for me. Just double spaced, the to like some indent all of the new paragraphs, uh, put in my articles, and then call it a day.
I mean,
Guarantee.
they're all pretty similar. I feel like, but
Hmm.
but,
All
but
right.
APA is the only one that I know.
Yeah, because they're the ones like I always use for nonfiction books, as far as I know.
Okay, yeah, the MLA one you mean?
I thought they all used APA because every time they use a source, it's like
It might
parentheses, last name, year, and parentheses, and that's looks like APA to me.
it might be. I have no idea. Don't know. But I do know that there's a bunch of there's a bunch of different
Yeah.
ones. So it might even be, like the publishers themselves might have their own sort of formatting standards. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like even in like yeah, I don't know. Not sure on that one.
Because I do know like specific magazines tell you how they want you to format it, and I'm just like, fuck this.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. But I think I've had books where they they don't do in-text citations like APA, and they'll just have like a little mark. Or I think I have books also where there is no in-text citations at all, and there's just like a bibliography at the end. Um, but it's not something I thought. I guess not something I've thought a whole lot about. I'm not sure, but my guess is that each publisher has its own sort of standards. Is what I suspect.
Yeah, I did recently pick up the book "Are Cops Racist" by Heather McDonald. Yeah, I think she does have just the like bibliography at the end or like an index at the end. I don't think she has the
No,
sources listed, which kind of annoying me. Well,
yeah,
it's a 20-year-old
I
book,
think I've
but
seen that. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I think I've seen that. But my guess is that it's just like the publisher determines what they're gonna do. But yes.
all right. All right, that was a good time to end it. Thanks for doing this. It
All
took
right.
us about 2 hours ish.
It was
Glad
2 hours.
ish.
Well, yeah, we started it before we had some issues. So
Yeah. Uh, well, glad I got the audio fixed because I really didn't want to like glitch out this entire fucking conversation.
I know.
All right, yeah. So yeah, I'll see you around.
All right. We'll
Hopefully
see you.
see you on Sundays or Wednesdays, depending on who shows up on the meetings or discussion
Yeah, for
nights, I
sure.
guess. Or yeah, so thanks for doing this.
All right, we'll see you.
Bye.